Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Nashtaprayeshu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiti. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Pada Saganadita Shri Vishathanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Jabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste. Gauravani Paksharani Dirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschat Ukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yattripadam Mahamande Shri Gurum Din Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Om Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all the devotees for this Katha of the Srimad Bhagavat. We are continuing our journey on the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavat, which is essentially focusing on the topic of sthanam, on certain prominent topics of the Srimad Bhagavat. The topic of sthanam refers to the place that the Lord has created for the various kinds of living entities. So conditioned souls, based on their desires and what they deserve, effectively their karmic account, they are placed into 8.4 million species, and they are placed in various kinds of environments across the universe. So there are various kinds of habitable places known as lokas. Lokas, in very simple words, means where people can reside. So in that context, this very interesting discussion between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj is happening in the fifth canto, where after the first part of the fifth canto obviously is the descendants of Priyavrat Maharaj, but after that the topic goes into this very interesting discussion, because it was Priyavrat Maharaj who was very foundational, especially in terms of how Bhumandal is organized. So I'm not going to go into all those details again. We have been discussing that over so many chapters now. We are now almost at the end of the fifth canto. In fact, we are at the penultimate chapter, chapter 25. The fifth canto has 26 chapters in total. And we are almost at the end of that section, which is chapter number 25. Right. The chapter for today, which is entitled The Glories of Lord Ananta, is also one of the relatively very small chapters, around 16 verses, 15 more specific, in this particular chapter. It's a very small chapter, but it is part of the logical progression of the description of the universe. If you remember, whole discussion of the universal structure began with the description of the Bhumandal disk, which is roughly around at the center of the universe, like a huge lotus leaf. After having discussed the horizontal structure of the universe over a few chapters, we began our discussion of the vertical structure of the universe. We discussed above the Bhu, first we discussed Swarga onwards. Swarga, Mahar, Janar, Tapar, Satya. We also discussed about Mahavaikuntha. We discussed about Dhruvalok, the Saptarshilok, and the various grahas. Went into all those topics in great detail. Who are the residents? What kind of activities happen there? Who are the residents in each of these various abodes? So, a lot of interesting knowledge which is shared in the Vedic literatures, the Bhagavad, as well as various other scriptures we discussed. So that was a very enlightening, at least for me, as I'm studying this topic. And I hope it has been so for you. So after having discussed the vertical structure in the upward direction, then we started discussing the vertical structure in the downward direction. Downward meaning Bhuvarlok, which is immediately below the Swargas, and then going downwards to the lower 7 planetary systems, beginning with Atan. So we had that very interesting discussion on how these 7 lower planetary systems are actually situated almost like snake burrows deep inside the Bhumandal disk at various levels of depths, roughly around the center of the disk, vertically under Mount Sumeru. 10,000 yojanas by 10,000 yojanas by 10,000 yojanas, roughly the dimensions of each of these hills. And we had this very interesting discussion of how the Bhagavatam describes these various regions, what are their characteristics, what kind of living entities stay there, who are the prominent residents there. So we had a very interesting insight. So while we often hear about Swarga, we had never heard about Bila Swarga. Bila means the tunnel-like holes. It's like a snake resides in a hole in the ground. Similarly, various kind of demoniac species reside in the lower planetary system. And we discussed how even though they are labeled as demoniac, and the reason they are labeled as demoniac is because they are not devotees, and that's why they're demoniac. But nonetheless, these planetary systems are actually extremely opulent. They are, in one sense, even more opulent than the higher planetary systems. We discussed about the conditions of life there. We discussed about how there is so much unimpeded sense enjoyment in these planetary systems, that their only fear there is the Sudarshan Chakra, which comes and takes away the life of those whose lifespan is exhausted. Otherwise, they neither get old nor get diseased. They are fit and healthy and young throughout their life. So these places are ideally suited for demoniac mentality, which is focused on enjoying senses all through their life. So we discussed all these various 7 planetary systems, the lowest being the Patal region. So now we have come to a very interesting point in the universal structure, because Patal is the lowest of the 14 planetary systems. Now, at this particular point, the discussion goes, what is below this whole Bhumandal disk? Because if you remember, wait a second, that diagram. Let me share this for you. So you can visualize what have just discussed. Just give me a second. Yeah. So this is how it looks like. So this is a very simplified view of what I just spoke. This is the Bhumandal disk. Of course, the top layer is actually a terrace shape, so it's actually going slightly in an incline. This is Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru is actually 1 lakh yojanas tall, out of which 84,000 yojanas is above the ground, the Bhumandal's top surface, and 16,000 yojanas inside. So there is gold embedded inside. And then there are these various planetary systems. I think I had showed this diagram the last time, if I'm not wrong. So this is just a representation again. Each of them is 10,000 by 10,000 and deep 10,000. Then there is a 500 yojanas gap in between. Then the next one, so Atal, Vital, Sutal, Talatal, Mahatal, Rasatal, Patal. Anybody remembers who are the prominent residents in each of this? Should I do a quick quiz?
The Nagas in Patal.
Nagas in Patal. Okay, one person will answer only once. Yes, Nagas in Patal. Let's start with Atal. Okay. By the way, since you mentioned Patal, was it Amit mentioned to answer?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, dear Amit Prabhu, who's the most prominent Naga in Patal Lok?
No, don't remember, Prabhuji.
Okay. Anybody else?
Vasuki?
Yes, Vasuki. Yeah. So Vasuki is also said to be adorning the neck of Lord Shiva. This is other Shiva. So some of these demoniac species are actually quite close to Lord Shiva. Can you imagine? Okay, so let's start from the top. Atal. Anybody remembers who's the main resident of Atala? The clue is that he's
Mayadana.
not Mayadana, he's the son of Mayadana. What is his name?
Bali Maharaj?
No. So Bala, his name is Bala. So Bala, who's the son of Mayadana, he resides here. Vitala, who's the chief resident in Vitala?
Lord Shiva with Bhavani.
Correct. Lord Shiva and Bhavani as the chief resident. There are many other demoniac entities also reside there, but the most prominent are Shiva and Bhavani. Very good. Then in Sutala, who's the most prominent resident?
Maharaj Bali.
Vamanadeva.
Bali Maharaj. Yes, and Vaman Dev. Yeah, Vaman Dev in one sense is the most prominent, but he's guarding the gate. So he's the doorkeeper. But the main resident is Bali Maharaj because he's considered the Lord of Sutala Loka. Then Talatala.
Maya.
Yeah, Mayadana, not Maya, Mayadana. the father of Bala, who stays in Atallaloka. Mayadanav is the very mystical demon who's considered a master architect. Then Mahatala,
Full of snakes.
yes, full of snakes, various snakes. Few names are mentioned. There's not one name, but quite a few descendants of Kadru, Kuhaka, Takshaka, Kaliya, Sushena. So some of these names were mentioned. Then the Rasatala. Rasatala also has various kinds or categories of demons. Yeah, who are the sons of Diti and Danu, called the Panis, Nivata Kavachas, Kaleyas, Hiranya Purvasis. And Patala we just discussed, yeah, headed by Vasuki, many various types. So these are very, very amazing lokas which are illuminated by the gems on the heads of the Nagas, because there is no sun shining in these regions, obviously because it is underground. Yeah, because it is inside the ground, there is no perception of the sun. Because there is no perception of the sun or any of the planetary motions, there is no conspicuous perception of the passing of time. So there is no separate phenomenon of day and night. So practically there is no fear of the time factor, because one doesn't really realize the passing of time. And in fact, because there is no old age, there is no symptoms of aging, etc. Practically without any anxiety or material inconveniences, the demoniac, whenever I'm using the word demoniac, please understand demoniac here means godless sense gratifiers. So such demoniac people are living on earth also. They may not be living the kind of lives that these people have in the Vilaswarga. Because even to qualify to enjoy this kind of unobstructed material enjoyment, you require pious credits. They may not be spiritual, they may not be devoted to Vishnu, but they still have merits, because to enjoy even materially, you need pious credits. So demons also work hard. It's not that all demons are lazy. Laziness is a symptom of mode of ignorance. Demons are mainly in the mode of passion. Passion means they want wealth, they want power, they want to achieve. Why? For themselves, to enjoy, to control. So when we use the word demoniac, again and again I try to remind you, do not immediately imagine that they are people with horns, full of all dirt, very beautiful looking, beautiful bodies, scented bodies, nice ornaments, nice jewels, nice clothes, maybe even a suit and tie. But they do not have a spiritual purpose of life, nor do they actually accept and submit to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demons are those who are self-centered. They are not driven by prema or love for God, they are driven by kama. Atmendriya priti vancha tarabale kama. They are driven by the desire to rule, enjoy for themselves. And when that becomes threatened, they can go to any level. You see Kamsa, he was willing to chop off the head of his sister the day of her marriage, as soon as he heard the news. So his so-called love instantly transformed to a murderous attitude. So this is the nature of demons. But what is the nature of the great personalities? You see the example in Ramayana, Hanuman, you see the example of Bharat, you see the example of Lakshman. When they had the opportunity to enjoy also, they were engaged only in service. So that is essentially the difference between the demons and the devotees. So these lower planets are in this way places of intense enjoyment, but godless enjoyment. And that is why these are not places that we aspire to go. Actually, as devotees, we don't aspire to go in any of the 14 planetary systems, but especially not here. Of course, the best place for making genuine spiritual advancement is in Bharatvarsha, and especially in the current situation on Bharatakhanda. So you can see the Bharatkhanda here. It's being shown. It is just being shown, and this is not to scale, but this is just being shown here just to give a relative indication of the position of the earth vis-a-vis the rest of these lokas. And that is why sometimes it is said, if you dig deep into the earth, now the earth obviously is a globe which is perched on the Milk Ocean. We have seen and gone through that, not Milk Ocean, sorry, Salt Ocean, through columns of ice. We have already discussed that, so I'm not going to go into that again. But sometimes it is described, if you go deep into the earth, you go down, 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 down. How down? From the South Pole further down. Because this is the North Pole, the South Pole. The South Pole is touching the Bhumandal through columns of ice which are in contact with the saltwater ocean. You go down, 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 you'll go to Atal. Further down, Utal, Sutal. It is said sometimes the snakes and other residents of these lokas come up through their snake holes. Sometimes, make visits to earth also. So, of course, nowadays, you don't hear so much about this, but in one time, even in Hindi and regional movies, it was common to have this Nagin, suddenly, transforming from snake to lady, lady to snake, and all these kind of stories. So these are all coming from this kind of a context. I'm not saying that those movies or those stories are true. I'm just telling where that idea came from. And in theory, it is possible. Of course, it may not happen exactly like this. But these are all very powerful mystical beings who may sometimes come for various reasons and temporarily visit the earth and even change forms. And that's why we say these are not just ordinary snakes or reptiles, like we see the sarpas here. These are very, very powerful beings. These are the children of Kadru, the descendants of Kadru, one of the wives of Kashyapa. By the way, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a very interesting story. Sorry, diversion. But I think it's interesting and is relevant in this context. This chapter is small, so we'll be able to cover the chapter, no worries. So it's a very interesting story. And the story goes like this. And it is linked to Kadru, because we're talking about the context of Kadru and the snakes, because all these snakes are actually descendants of Kadru. So Kashyap Muni, we know that had many wives. I forgot the total number, but a huge number of, I think 10, 11 or more. But prominent amongst them were Diti, Aditi, Danu, Kadru, and I think Vinita, if I remember the name correctly. And then there were a few others. So the sons of Aditi became the Devatas, the Adityas. The sons of Diti became the Daityas, a kind of demoniac species. Sons of Danu became the Danavas. They also occupied the lower planetary systems. Only the Devatas went upward, the Adityas. Almost all others went in the Vilaswarga category. So these two wives were very close, Vinita and Kadru. And generally, sometimes, I shouldn't say generally, sometimes when women are very close to each other, there's also a hidden competition amongst both of them. So Kadru wanted children, and Kashyapa, asked her what kind of children you want. So she said, I want 100 extremely powerful children who will be very powerful and who everybody will be fearful of. And she put a few more characters, a few more description there. I don't remember all the details. And then the blessing was given to her. And she had 100 eggs. So as soon as she had 100 eggs, and over time they were going to result in children, the other co-wife, Anita, started feeling very envious and uneasy. She's going to get children. I don't have any children. So I also want children. So she also went to her husband, I have blessed Kadru with, these 100 very powerful children. I also want to be blessed. So said, okay, what kind of blessing you want? Said, you gave her 100 children. I don't need 100. Just give me 2, but you give me 2 such children who are so illustrious and powerful that even the 100 sons of Kadru will be afraid of them. Said, okay. He gave her 2 eggs. Or 2 eggs were manifest to her. So it is said, Kadru's 100 eggs hatched first. And from all those eggs, powerful snakes came out. So the various Nagas, all these various prominent Naga names, including Vasuki and others, they all are Kadru's children. They are amongst the 100 children of Kadru. And they are, occupying Palatal, Patal, and all these realms. So as, Mahatal and Patal and all these realms. So as the eggs of Kadru hatched and she had 100 Sarpa children, Vinita was looking at her eggs and they were not hatching. So she was feeling, oh, I was thinking I will have my children first, but she beat me in the race. Something similar happened in the Mahabharata between Kunti and Gandhari. Anyway, I will not deviate into that story. But that's also a very interesting story of this competitive nature between these 2 ladies within the same home. Especially whether they're within the same home, 2 bahus within the same home. This kind of competition sometimes comes about. So Vinita became very uncomfortable. She was waiting when this egg will hatch. And she became at one point so restless that she literally broke one of the 2 eggs. And it is said she broke the egg before it had fully developed. And that is why from that egg came about an entity whose body was not fully developed. Only the upper part of the body was developed. The part below the waist, especially the legs and below, was not developed. And then the child which came out, was complaining and crying to his mother, what you have done? See what? Because in the higher realms, these entities are born. They are not born necessarily like, the same situation as small crying babies like we have on earth. The conditions are different in different planetary systems. So this particular personality was born in a slightly deformed way. He is known as Aruna, the son of Vinita. Who is this Aruna? He goes on to become the chariot driver of Surya Deva. Yeah. So I think you were asking this question. I think Veena Mataji or Santanam was asking this question, or Aruna not having legs. So yes, this is the story. I came across it, so I thought I will share. So that is true. And this is the story related to it, that he's one of the sons of Vinita. And this is the background. So he became the illustrious charioteer of Suryadev. So after this episode, she was very careful. She did not touch the other egg. She let it hatch. Vinita. And when that egg hatched, out came a very, very powerful eagle, Garuda, who went on to become the carrier of Lord Vishnu, the great devotee Garuda. That is why one of the names of Lord Garuda is Vainateya, the son of Vinita. Vainateya. Of course, in one sense, even Aruna is Vainateya, but generally Garuda is referred to as Vainateya. In the same way, Pandu's children are referred to as Pandavas, whose descendants as Kauravas. Similarly, Vinita's children are referred to as Vainateya. So in that way, she had illustrious children, and they are so powerful. Of course, Aruna is full-time busy because he's all the time in his driver job of the sun chariot. So he has no time. But Garuda, when he's not busy taking the Lord around for various pastimes, travels around the universe also. And as we all know, the eagle is a terror for the snakes. So that was the ask of Vinita. I can have only 2 children, but they must be a terror for the 100 children of Kadru. And we also discussed how one of the fears of the residents of the Nagas of the lower planets, especially in Mahatal, is when Garuda comes and he swoops into these realms occasionally to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So we discussed that. So these are all background. Yeah. So you see all these things tie up. So this story is not mentioned in the Bhagavad. Yes, it's not mentioned in the Bhagavad as far as I remember, as far as I know, but it's mentioned in the Puranas elsewhere. So this is the background. So this is the interesting part. So this is what we have been discussing so far. Now the discussion, we are entering now the 25th chapter, goes into what happens further down. If I can share my screen. So this was one of the pictures we had shown to you way back when we actually started this whole conversation. I don't know how many classes ago, maybe 8, 10, 7, 8 classes ago. So this is a simplistic picture or an image, not to scale, describing the universal structure. This is the Bhumandal disk, Mount Meru, upper planets, Sun, Moon, Nakshatras, various grahas, Saptarishi Loka, Dhruva Loka, Mahar, Janar, Tapasati. We've already discussed all of these. There's a Mahavaikuntha just between the outer covering and Satyaloka. We discussed about that. The Loka mountains, we discussed about that. The Loka Varsha and the Aloka Varsha, and then the Ghanodaka regions. And then, of course, the small space between the Mandal disk and the universal coverings. But if you recollect, we also discussed way in the beginning that this whole Mandal disk, of course, this is a cross section, but it's actually a circular disk. The circular disk is being supported by Lord Ananta. So since we are going in our downward journey, we went through Atal, Vital, Sutal, Talatal, Mahatal, Rasatal, Patal. Now, Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj about Lord Ananta's position. Actually, he skips the topic of the 28 hells because the 28 hells are not explicitly one of the 14 planetary systems. But later, after this particular chapter, Parikshit Maharaj is very curious because he perhaps notices that there is some topic which is missed out. So he asks a very specific question, and then Shukadev Goswami goes and describes these 28 hells. Because actually, if you take the journey vertically downwards, below Patal, first the 28 hellish planets come, then Bhumandal ends, and Garbhodak ocean begins. That's a small gap. And this whole disk is supported on one of the thousands of hoods of Lord Ananta. Not all hoods, huh? Only one of the thousands of hoods of Lord Ananta. If you remember, we also discussed about that there are 8 Diggaja elephants who are also supporting this disk. They are also resting on the hoods of Ananta, and from there they are giving additional support. More of a balancing support rather than carrying the weight. Correct? Sometimes, one person is carrying the weight, others are just making sure that there is a balance. It doesn't tumble over. Correct? Just like Krishna, when he was lifting Govardhan hill, even though he was lifting it, all other Gopas were also coming from down and putting sticks. Just to make sure that it's on a little finger. What if? And that too of the left hand. So it doesn't tilt in one direction or the other direction. So they all were very eager to support, even though, there was no real reason, but out of their love and affection they were doing. So these elephants are more of balancing elephants. They are not carrying the weight of the Bhumandal. The main weight of the Bhumandal is carried by Lord Ananta. But it is said that Lord Ananta is so powerful, being an expansion of the Supreme Lord, and we'll come into his description shortly. Lord Ananta is so powerful. This is the view. There are elephants on his various hoods. It's not very clear. This is Lord Ananta actually. And Lord Ananta is resting on the back of Lord Kurma, who's in the Garbhodak ocean. And the hood is not shown. One of the hoods actually supports the disc also. It's not very clear. It's not explicitly shown here, but I hope you can imagine. While there are thousands of hoods, and 8 of these hoods have 8 elephants, and one of the hoods is directly supporting this whole disc. So this is actually the heaviest part of the universe, right? Because the rest, grahas and the other nakshatras and all of them, they are tied to the pole star, which is an abode of Lord Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, and they are, with the Vata Rashmi, they are being made to revolve in their various orbits. So all that we have already discussed. Yeah. But the bulk of the universe is the weight of this part. The Bhumandal disk, the Lokalok mountains, very, 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 very heavy. But the Bhagavatam says, for the hood of Lord Ananta, one of the hoods, thousands of hoods, on which this universal Bhumandal disk is being carried, to him it feels as if there is only one white mustard seed on his head in weight. Which means he's so powerful that he doesn't even feel that there is anything on his head. So it's not that, he's struggling to carry the earth. This thing, like a weightlifter in a Olympic championship, great struggle they hold and their hand is shaking, and few seconds they have to hold to make sure their attempt is successful, and then they throw it down. So not that kind of holding. Very gently. It is that sometimes he forgets that it is actually on his head. And he is busy, not just with that one hood, but with all the other hoods. He's busy continuously chanting the endless glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And remember, even though Lord Ananta is the Supreme Lord, he's an expansion of the Supreme Lord. And if you remember, all expansions of the Lord have a mood of servitude towards their source. A very interesting feature. So even God, other than Krishna, because he is the supreme origin, Sarva Karana Karanam, all other expansions of the Lord, even though they are Vishnu Tattva, because they come as expansions of the expansions of the expansions, they have a kind of servitude as attitude towards their source and ultimately towards Sri Krishna, who is their ultimate origin. So Lord Ananta in his Leela is also a devotee, just like, because Lord Ananta is ultimately coming from Lord Balaram. Ananta Shesh is one of the expansions, and we'll be discussing the topic a bit more detail shortly. So it is a Lord Ananta is absorbed in what? Is absorbed in continuously with his thousands of hoods. You can imagine something like this. One hood is carrying, all other hoods are just swaying in intoxication of chanting the glories of the Lord. Very, 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 very beautiful form. It is said at one time the four Kumaras had a Bhagavatam class here with Lord Ananta. They came down all the way here to learn from him. So various beautiful pastimes have happened in this region. But this region is the region which is just above the Garbhodak ocean and just below the Bhumandala disk. So Lord Ananta is also sometimes known as Lord Sankarshana, who is the Supreme Lord. And if you consider from a position perspective, from a distance perspective, it is said he is roughly 30,000 yojanas below Patala Loka in terms of his location. This particular form of the Lord, who is known as Ananta, also has two other names. One of the names of Lord Ananta is Tamasi. Now, this name is a bit misleading because if one thinks of the Lord as Tamasi, it comes from the word tamas, then one will think, oh, the Lord is in the mode of ignorance. But the Bhagavatam clarifies that it is not that the Lord is in the mode of ignorance, but the Lord Ananta is called Tamasi because he is the predominating deity of the mode of ignorance. While Lord Shiva is the Guna avatar of the mode of ignorance, the predominating deity of the mode of ignorance is Lord Sankarshana or Ananta. That's why he's also sometimes known as Tamasi, even though his own body is spiritual. He's controlling that principle. And when the right time comes, this Ananta manifests Lord Shiva from between his eyebrows. And that Shiva takes 11 forms of Rudra and he destroys the three worlds with that fire. Remember, we had that discussion also a couple of classes ago. So this Lord is very powerful. And generally, he is controlling his anger. He's hoping that all living entities will follow the path of dharma and serve his own master, the Supreme Lord, by following the path of dharma and taking up to the path of devotion. But when he sees at the end of the yuga that situation has become, his anger manifests. Then from his anger, between his eyebrows comes out Rudra, takes 11 forms. From the third eye of Rudra, fire comes and it destroys the worlds. And there is heavy rain, we discussed that, and it washes away the burnt universe, and the washed water pours down and drains back into the Garbhodaka. And this process is repeated every Manvantar. Sorry, every night of Brahma. So, Tamasi is one name. Another name of Lord Ananta is Sankarshana. So, Sankarshana, if you remember, he is one of the early expansions coming from the Lord. So, Lord Ananta is actually an expansion of Sankarshan and sometimes is also known as Sankarshan. Sankarshan is ultimately one of the expansions of Balaram. Now, this Sankarshan is also a very, very interesting deity. The word Sankarshana in one sense means to attract, to bring together. Sankarshan. Now, why Lord Ananta is referred to as Sankarshana? For many reasons. One of the reasons which is mentioned here is because Lord Sankarshan is the predominating deity of false ego, ahankar. When a conditioned soul comes into this material world, what is it that binds the spirit soul to matter? Spirit soul is spiritual. Matter is material. Correct? Now all of our soul is sitting within the body, right? Why it is not coming out? If I move like this, why my soul is not staying in that place and my body is coming out? What is sticking it? What is sticking matter to spirit? So obviously it is not a material glue. It is not Fevicol or any other type of glue. The glue, the stickiness is ahankar. And that ahankar, which is the binding element between the spirit and matter, is that sense of false identity. And that sense of false identity, which is the primary consequence of material consciousness or the primary characteristic of a material consciousness, which essentially manifests itself in the thought, I, me, and mine. I am the enjoyer. Because it is false ego. It is not true ego. True ego is what? I am an eternal servant of Krishna. That is real identity. What is false identity? I am the Lord. I am the enjoyer. I am this body. Which gives a feeling of I, me, mine. Sometimes going all the way up to thinking I am the Lord. So to facilitate conditioned souls to try to enjoy matter, the Lord in his form of Sankarshana manifests this material consciousness. And he is the predominating deity of this material consciousness. He is not material, but he creates this consciousness to allow living entities to forget the Lord and think themselves the Lord and try to enjoy matter. So Lord Sankarshan is the predominating deity which draws together the enjoyer and the object of enjoyment, which is essentially the conception of I, the material. So these are the broad characteristics of Ananta, which are described here. Of course, in other places in the scriptures, it is said, Sankarshan also manifests in this universe in terms of the force of gravity. Even up to this day, the scientists are not able to even understand how is this gravity, how is this various forces, gravity, magnetism, electricity, how they are influencing objects at a distance, how exactly all these things are working. It is said these are all manifestations of the energy of Sankarshan, which makes all these forces manifest, manage the functioning of the material. The Bhagavatam then continues to describe, after having described the power and the function of Ananta and his greatness, then starts describing the beauty of Lord Ananta. So, of course, at one level, Lord Ananta is manifested as a snake, but oftentimes the Lord is manifested as Sankarshan, because Ananta is not different from Sankarshan. So the form of Lord Sankarshan is very, very beautiful. If you recollect, because Lord Shiva is coming from Ananta or Sankarshan, like what we discussed. Yes? Yeah? Lord Shiva is actually the executor of the same principle of which Ananta or Sankarshan is the predominating deity. Tamasi, predominating deity is Ananta, right? He is known as Tamasi. Who's the Lord of the mode of Tamas in terms of active execution? Lord Shiva. Correct? Similarly, Sankarshan creates the false ego. But who's the active manager of false ego in the material world? Shambhu, Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva and Sankarshan are very closely related, or in another word, we can think of, just like Ananta manifests Lord Shiva from his forehead. So Lord Shiva is manifested from Ananta / Sankarshana for the active execution of these things. And because Sankarshan is his source, Lord Shiva is actively meditating on Lord Sankarshan. If you remember, we discussed about Lord Shiva performing austerities in many places, even in Ilavarta Varsha. If you remember, when we discussed the chapter of Ilavarta Varsha, when we were discussing Jambudvipa, we discussed about how Lord Shiva is always meditating on Lord Sankarshan. Sankarshan is his source. In his Guna Avatara Leela, Lord Shiva is executing the tattva which is predominated by Sankarshan. And as a representative of Sankarshan, he is executing those affairs within the real world. This is a very important principle. Of course, in his deepest personal aspiration, Lord Shiva is aspiring to be a servant of Govinda, Radhika and Krishna. But as a Guna Avatar, he is manifesting as an expansion of Ananta Sankarshana. Okay, so please remember this. So Lord Sankarshan is said to be so beautiful, and because he's right at the bottom, he's at the form of a snake. All the snakes of the lower planetary system are very fond of him. Our God, our God, our God. It's our God. He's also snake. So this is the nature of material consciousness, right? Yeah. For example, when Prabhupada went to Africa, Prabhupada told to the Africans there, God is dark in color, he's black. They all became very happy. God is not a white man, he's a black man. Prabhupada then had to explain to them, he's not black like you. Which means the Lord's Shama color, it's actually a transcendental color. It's not just a material representation. Anyway, so they said, of course, Lord Ananta is also worshipped not just by the snakes or the Nagas who are residing in this logo. He is also worshipped and glorified by various pure devotees. So it is there the leaders of the snakes, they come in front of Lord Sankarshan, Ananta. When they come there, they see his beautiful form and they are so happy to see his beautiful form. It is said, when they come in front of him, the Lord's beautiful pink color toenails, Lord Sankarshan, are so shining that all these snake leaders can see their own form reflected in the toenails of Lord Sankarshan, and they become very happy. The nice jewels and nice decorated forms, they see their own forms reflected in the lotus toenails of the Lord. Also, it is said, various young princesses of the various snakes, they also come there and they see the beautiful form of the Lord. It is said they also apply various kinds of chandan and other scented items to the Lord's form, and in that way they serve him and please him, and they are so attracted to the Lord as they serve him like that. And the Lord casts loving glances on these devotees, and in that way blesses them. So the Lord enjoys service of all these various devotees in various ways. The Lord, it is said, he's also, along with the Nagas, is also being worshipped by various demigods, demons, Puragas, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, and sages, are all constantly offering various prayers. And with very sweet words, it is said, Lord Ananta reciprocates with all these prayers, all these wonderful devotees. The beauty of Lord Sankarshan is described like this. It is said he wears a blue cloth. He wears one earring. He has a plow on his shoulder. Very beautiful arms. A golden belt around his waist. A Vaijayanti garland full of tulasi around his neck. And in that way, he enjoys beautiful pastimes. So this description is so similar to that of Lord Balram, isn't it? Blue cloth, holding a plow. It is said Sankarshan's body is also whitish in color. In fact, even Lord Shiva's body, Lord Shiva is shown as if he is blue in color. But Lord Shiva's complexion is also fair. It's not dark. Karpura Gauram Karunavataram. His color is like the camphor. Sankarshan is also fair. Balaram is fair like a autumn cloud. But Krishna and his various Vishnu expansions are Shamavarna. Balaram and his various expansions are fair. Very interesting. Lord Shiva, Sankarshan, Balaram, all fair. So somebody asks you, is God fair or is he dark? He's both fair and he's also dark. His original form, he is Sham. But in his original form, his immediate first, his energetic form is golden. Radharani is golden. And his first bodily expansion, Balaram, is fair. So nobody has any reason to complain. All shades are covered. We are so bodily conscious that we try to put God also into our material conceptions. Anyways, so there's a very beautiful description. It is said that it is so purifying to hear the glories of Lord Ananta. It is said, whoever hears the glories of this Lord Ananta, of course, Lord Ananta is himself eternally always hearing the glories of his master. But he who hears the glories even of Ananta, it is said, the Lord enters into the core of their hearts and washes away all material contamination, cuts the knot of ignorance. The karma bandhan, the karmashaya, that desire to enjoy fruitive activity and to lord it over material nature, that ahankar, because he is predominating over that ahankar. It is said only Guru Tattva can cut that ahankar. Because Balram is the Guru Tattva, Sankarshan and Ananta who are coming in that line, they are capable and specializing in the job of cutting and destroying that ahankar to liberate the soul, to make him qualified, be re-established in his pure ego as servant of Krishna. It is said even Narad Muni is continuously glorifying Lord Ananta on his Tumburu. We say Tambura, but in Sanskrit it is known as Tumburu. So that Lord, this Lord Ananta is not ordinary. He is the cause of the material manifestation, the cause of creation, maintenance, destruction. And by his glance, all these material gunas become agitated and this whole form of the material manifestations. So he is the one who takes various forms and pastimes and maintains this material universe. And then We are about to conclude the chapter in a couple of minutes. Just bear with me. And then the Bhagavatam concludes by glorifying his name, pastimes, and prowess. So there are a few beautiful verses with which I will conclude the chapter. It is said, what to speak of the glories of the Lord? They will not, they of course will purify the heart. But the name of the Lord himself is so powerful. Yana nama shrutam anukirta yed akasmad arto va yadi patitaha pralambhanad ava hanti amha sapadi nirnam asheshamanyam kam sheshad bhagavata ashrayena mumukshu. Bhagavatam says. It is said, if a sinful person chants Lord Ananta's name, after hearing it from devotees, especially in a disciplic succession, if he hears the name, even if that person is sinful, but if he chants the name of the Lord with faith, even jokingly, even as he's slipping and falling, somehow he chants, that name is capable to destroy all the sins of that particular living entity. So who is that person who will avoid chant the names of Lord Shesha? Because the names of the Lord are so powerful. So in this way, the name of the Lord is glorified. And then his glories are also described as unlimited. That is why he's known as Ananta. He's Ananta because he's chanting the Ananta glories of the Lord, but Ananta himself is also Ananta because his own glories are also very, very unlimited. This entire universe with all its features, mountains, rivers, all the living beings. Living is just like a small atom on his head. So in that way, Lord Ananta's glories, his power, his greatness has no limits. Duranta Viryoru, unlimited. Even though he's self-satisfied, even though he needs nothing to bestow his mercy on conditioned souls, is residing below the lower planetary systems. He's actually taking a lower position. Why? Because he's supporting as a service. So this is the Lord's kindness. So the Lord doesn't just dump the living entities into an eternal fire of hell. When the living entities are conditioned, Lord is always there to somehow or the other induce them, turn back towards. And that's why he takes all these various forms, whether it is Ananta, whether it is the Lord in Mahavaikuntha or in Shirodakshayi Vishnu or Mahavishnu, all these various forms of the Lord. So the chapter concludes by Sukadeva Goswami telling Parikshit Maharaj that my entire description is over. Whatever I have heard from authorities in terms of the structure of the universe, sab kuch bataya. I have told you everything. So my part is now formally over. This is what Sukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj and concludes the chapter. So I'm going to stop here. So this brings us to the end of this chapter. And in the next chapter, like a very sincere student, Parikshit Maharaj, he's not waiting for the class to end. Class is ended, ding, 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 period over. Let me run away from class. He said, no, you said over, but he knows one topic is missed out. What happened to the hellish planets? Not described yet. So he asks a question and then inspires him to Shukadeva Goswami to speak about the 28 hellish planets. So that is the last and the concluding chapter. You can see like an appendix, the description of the universal. Okay, so I'm opening up the floor. Amit Prabhu has raised his hand first, so we'll hear from him. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, you mentioned today that Lord Shiva appears from between the eyebrows of Lord Anantadev. But earlier we had learned that Lord Shiva appears between the eyebrows of Lord Brahma, right? So what is the difference?
So there are various manifestations of Lord Shiva. So this appearance of Lord Shiva from eyebrow. So in the beginning of creation, yes, Lord Shiva appears from the eyebrows of Brahma. So that is true. So this appearance of Lord Shiva from between the eyebrows of Ananta happens when the time of destruction comes. That appearance of Lord Shiva from the eyebrows of from the forehead, not the eyebrows, from the forehead of Lord Brahma happens at the beginning of creation. See, because Lord Shiva not only performs the role of being a destroyer from the fire coming from his third eye, which is what he does when he manifests himself from between the eyebrows of Lord Ananta. But Lord Shiva also performs the role of creating various ghastly demoniac species at the beginning of creation when he appears from the forehead of Lord Brahma. So these are two different distinct episodes, and that's why we are saying that there are multiple Rudras and there are multiple manifestations of Rudra, but they all represent the same Tattva. So Shiva Tattva, the Rudra Tattva. And
Okay, got it,
Shankar,
Prabhuji.
yeah,
Thank you.
and Shankar is said to be the most, the Bhagavad Gita says, Rudranam Shankaras Chasmi. Of all the Rudras, I am Shankar because Shankar is the most prominent. Yeah, like that. So it is said at the time of universal dissolution, all 11 Rudras are embodied and they all together destroy the three worlds from the fire which comes out from their eyes, from their third eye.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very clear.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, Suraj. Prabhu?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Can you tell me when that it comes to the lotus and the stem, right? So how the worlds are distributed, the planetary systems, from the navel of Vishnu, right? Brahma is sprouted, right? So
Yeah. So within the stem of the lotus are, let me just see if I can go back to that image. Okay. It would be best if I show you that image, then don't have to stretch your imagination that much. Okay, this is one image, not the best one. Just share it nonetheless. Okay, rather than searching too many, you can see this, right? Yeah. So this is
yeah,
Bhumandal. Yeah. So this whole circular disc is said to be the leaf of the lotus.
okay.
Okay. So this water is like a lake water. Usually, just above the lake water, there is the leaf of the lotus, which is slightly separated. And then there is a stem going all the way up, and there is a lotus at the top. Yes.
Okay.
So the lotus represents the Brahma Loka. But the various planetary systems are said to be contained within this stem. The stem goes down all the way to the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is residing inside the water.
Okay.
It's not shown here.
So the tortoise also like above his navel, right?
Yeah. Tortoise is above the navel. Yeah. So that is why this lotus is not, this lotus is conceived as, this whole universal structure is conceived as a lotus flower. Think of it like that.
Okay.
Okay. You understand what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
this Bhumandal is not actually a lotus leaf. It can be conceived as the leaf of a lotus. The Brahmalok is conceived as the flower, and all the other plants. If you remember, this is the axis. This is the Meru, the Hua. This is Bhu, Hua, Swarga, all the way Dhruva, Janar, Mahar, Tapar, Satya. This is Satya Loka. So they are all situated within this stem, and then the same stem when it goes down under the earth below Sumeru, Atal, Vital, Sutal, Mahatal, Rasatal, Patal, like that, all the way down. So they can be imagined to be situated within the stem of the lotus, all the way going down and being connected to the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Because the creative potency is coming from there. Okay.
And one more question, Prabhu. That 7 concentric mind, ego, falls, earth, water, all those things. That is a vertical view or horizontal view?
That is neither vertical nor horizontal. That is circular view. Because those are the coverings of the universe, right? Let me go back. Those are the coverings of the universe. Right. Then I can show you back. These are the coverings of the universe.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, these are the
It's
layers.
clear.
So they are circular. Yeah. So actually, Lord Garbhodakshay Vishnu is down here. Of course, this is not to scale. Then there is Kurma within the water. On the Kurma, there is Ananta. Ananta is supporting the elephants, and also with one hood is supporting this entire disc. Then there is Mount Sumeru. Then there are the higher planets. Higher means Janar Mahar Tapar Satyam. This is Swarga. Janar Mahar Tapar Satyam. And then the Mahavaikuntha. These are the coverings of the universe.
Yeah, it's clear, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Sometimes, since you asked this question, there's one more image I want to show you. Some of you may have seen this Meru. This Meru is also representing what we have just discussed. It is in various forms. This is Kurma Prishta Shri Meru. This is Kurma Dev. These are the elephants. There are 8 elephants actually. They may not have been shown as exactly 8. This is the hood of Ananta. This is the terraced 7 terraces of the 7 Svipas. This is Bhumandal. This is Mount Sumeru. Okay.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Yeah. So from top, this looks like a Shri Chakra.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything
Hare
else?
Krishna.
Thank you, Haribol. Yes.
Yes.
Tarun? Prabhu?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a question on the lower planetary.
Hmm.
So, as those people are more full in the sense of enjoyment, and so how will they really get and going to get liberation and go and follow the path of mukti, because no one is there and guiding them? How will they really going to get and follow the path?
So we need people like you who are so compassionate that, after advancing in Krishna consciousness, you'll pray to the Lord and the Lord will make you born in those planets just so that you can give your association to them and make them devotees. Okay, correct? Just like great souls come also onto the earth. There are great souls. Prahlad was a great soul who was born in the Rakshasa Kula. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, of all the Daityas, Prahlad, I am Prahlad amongst the Daityas. Correct? Huh? Amongst the snakes, I am Vasuki. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So see, even though certain places are very sinful, or sinful in the sense materialistic, the nature of the Lord's mercies, there is always some opportunity. Even in Lanka, there was Vibhishan. Say somebody really wanted to take association, they could have gone. But did they go? Very few people take opportunity. We are doing class for 3 years now, online. How many of us are connected? Barely 20 families. So, and we discussed this topic earlier also. So why they are born there? So we cannot blame the Lord. It's not that the Lord have put them into a situation where there is godless. They are godless, and that's why they wanted a situation that they can forget God and be away from God. So God is just facilitating their desire. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? Huh? Those who want to also enjoy and also want to worship God, they go to Divya Swarga if they are pious enough. Those who want to enjoy and forget God and they have the necessary credits, they go down. Villa Swarga. Correct? Yeah. So even if one happens to be in a situation where based on one's karma and desires, one is in a godless place. Of course, no place is godless, but godless in the sense that there is no active opportunity for spiritual elevation. If somehow one develops a desire, somehow, on his own, somehow, if it happens, it is said as soon as the living entity develops a desire, Krishna, who's in the heart, knows, he will facilitate. He'll make the necessary arrangement. How he'll make arrangement is not our problem. That is God's problem. The Lord says, as soon as a living entity desires, very soon the Lord will arrange such a way that he gets. So there are various ways in which the Lord can help. In the worst come to worst case, if not externally, the Lord can directly guide the living entity from within the heart. Because the Lord has no limitation. Usually he'll guide from outside by connecting the living entity to another devotee, by giving him association of devotees. And devotee associations are everywhere. So it is not that there is not even one living entity who is not a devotee in a Bilaswarga. Already we spoke about Bali Maharaj is there.
Bali Maharaj.
We spoke Lord Shiva is there on Vitala. Now, the erstwhile Kaliya, who was demoniac, now he's a devotee. He's on Mahatal. Of course, right now he's not on Mahatal. Right now he's still on earth, but he's one of the residents of Mahatal. It is said after he was driven out of Yamuna, he is now residing in the ocean somewhere near Hawaii. Kaliya, Sarpa. He's also a multi-hooded snake. Eventually he will go. So there may always be certain exceptional souls in each of these various areas have some devotion to the Lord. So yeah, and then there are devotees who are so kind that who are taking birth in various areas to reach Krishna consciousness and to deliver the fallen conditions. So it is nice that devotees are thinking about this. So if you desire strong enough, then Krishna may empower us to perform some seva like that. But right now it is good we can practice this here first, because here the situation is not as difficult as the lower planets. Because first thing is we have to be strong. Otherwise, instead of they becoming like us, we will become like them.
Right.
Hit wicket. We don't want that. Okay. So, but that is the nature of the. Just like it is said, right, when we are discussing about the glory of the higher planets, there is no suffering there except for the feeling of compassion for the suffering of the souls of the lower systems. So, paradukka dukhi is the nature of the heart of a Vaishnava. Okay, anything else, Tanpro?
No, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Swati Mataji has something. Yes, Swati ji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Who is the predominating deity of the mode of passion?
Yes, good question. I think it is from one of the Chaturviva only. If you remember, we have Vasudev, Sankarshan, Anuruddha, and Pradyumna. Right? They are the four deities. Sankarshan, as we discussed, is in charge of the mode of ignorance. I have to check. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad. I don't remember on top of my head, but either Aniruddha or Pradyumna, one of them is mode of passion. But I can look that up, or you can try to find out also. I can also try to check. One of them is predominating deity of goodness. One of them is predominating deity of mode of passion.
Okay.
So again, they are transcendental. They are transcendental, but they are. So again, the active principle who's managing these affairs in the material world is Brahma for mode of passion. and Lord Shiva for mode of ignorance. And of course, Lord Vishnu is transcendental, and he's managing or controlling Sattva Guna in this material world. But it's from the Chaturvya only. That's why this Chaturvya is quite important.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
I'll find out and let you know in the group the exact deities. Okay, so thank you all very much. So we'll aim to have the class on Tuesday. Sorry, I was a bit busy and some office work on last Tuesday, so I had to cancel. So Krishna willing, we will continue our discussions. Also, hope you all had nice Balram Purnima celebrations, and Janmashtami is coming soon, 6th September. So we are all preparing for Janmashtami as well. So with that, thank you very much. And hopefully next Saturday is what date? It will be after Janmashtami only. So Janmashtami is already Wednesday, right?
Prabhuji is on 7th, right? On Janmashtami.
Yeah, it's next Thursday.
7th, is it? Okay. I
Yes.
thought I read 6th. Okay, so you're fine with the class on Tuesday, right? You're fine, then we'll go ahead. Perhaps we should speak about Janmashtami. I think that will be nice. Let's see. Then Saturday we can have a class. And then let's see. We'll see how it goes, because Thursday and Friday will be very busy, because Friday is Prabhupada's appearance day also. Those festivities will be there. Thursday will be Janmashtami. So anyway, I will keep you informed on the group. So do participate in the local temple events wherever you are. So yeah, so we'll target Tuesday. If there's any change, I'll let you know. Thank you very much. Antara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Samaveta.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna,
Thank
Prabhuji.
you.
Thank you
Hare
so
Krishna,
much.
Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.